So is it enough to just keep getting in the awareness position of the content that's arising to help awakening to become permanent? There are teachers out there that will teach that if you just keep getting in the awareness position of whatever content arises, for instance, you're having a thought, notice that there is awareness of the thought. Anchor into that awareness position. Or there is an emotion happening, anchor into the awareness of the emotion. And this gives us a sense of space or distance from what is happening. And so if we're suffering, it can give us some relief, particularly if it's a difficult emotion or a lot of heavy, challenging thinking going on. So it certainly can make us feel better, no doubt. But does it actually help with our progress with awakening? I don't think it does, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. So, and the reason why, I understand the logic of it perhaps, that if you just keep doing something enough, maybe it will become permanent. Now, when you are permanently awake, when that shift has happened, you are operating permanently from the awareness position without any effort. You're stuck there. That's the operating system you're in. And so, yes, that is where it is heading, certainly, but is that the process on how to get there, is to keep practicing that until it sticks? So I guess I can see the logic to that. If you just keep doing it enough, it's sort of like exercising a muscle. Wouldn't it just eventually just stay there? If you just kept practicing, wouldn't it just stay there? But I think that, so I can understand the logic, but it doesn't really get to the heart of what awakening is actually about. And that's why I don't think it would ever work. I can't see how it could work if we're talking about progressing with awakening and getting to the permanent awakenings. If that's what the goal is here, not to just stay in a transcendent state. Will continually getting in the awareness position and getting very proficient at that help you to get better at that skill and to transcend more easily? Yes, it certainly will. If you're happy to stay in the transcendent phase of awakening and to just go around or bypass that content that's arising to get relief and carry on with your life as normal, that's totally fine. That's what that technique will do. It will get you very good at transcending. But it will also be used as a bypass to not go into the work that you need to do to get awakening to actually stick. So useful for feeling good, that technique, if you're having a hard time, and helpful for having transcendent states or avoiding the content. Is it helpful for getting to permanent awakening? No, it's sort of going in a different direction, really, is how I see it. So it just gets you more and more transcendent, more spiritual bypassing even. For permanent awakening to happen, there are a few things that need to happen. And so if we are looking at a practice to see, is this practice actually beneficial for awakening to become permanent, not to have a transcendent experience, but for it to become permanent, then we sort of need to understand how awakening works and what's required to get that to become permanent. So the first thing, there's 3 areas really which are at the heart of the embodiment phase of awakening and what is required for awakening to become permanent. The first one is that we need to go on a journey inwardly into the core of our being, which is this mysterious void, in an embodied way, in a meditative way. And we go on this ongoing journey deeper and deeper through the layers to the absolute core of our being. That's one thing that needs to happen. We need to clear out the vessel, the body. It has stored in it imprints and traumas and patterns and things that are getting in the way of us, of awakening sticking, of it being abiding, because it's noisy in there. And so this causes the nervous system to be noisier. It has repressed emotions tied up around the contractions that are stored as those imprints. And then it has stories that are connected to the imprint and the emotions that are stored there about things that happen, things that didn't happen, ideas about the world that we have, beliefs about the world, and all of that wants to be deconstructed. So part of that is healing and more along the lines of therapy, but it's the contractions somatically that want to be shifted out of the form, out of the body, to empty out this vessel. All those emotions that are bound up in that want to be processed and expressed and yelled and cried and all of that good stuff. On the level of the mind, that wants to be all unbound, all the beliefs and concepts and ideas that you made about what happened at that time, probably in childhood, it's still all bound up in that. And all of that together is creating a sense of a separate self that's actually not there. And it's creating noise in the body, noise for the nervous system, and not allowing us to be an empty vessel for awakening to stick. So that's the second thing that we need to work on to get awakening to become permanent. The third thing is that the identity structure needs to deconstruct completely until it's absolutely gone. So this is the false self. So the first one is we were finding our true self through experientially in an embodied way, remembering who we are by going through the deeper layers into ourself. The second one, we're preparing the body, we're cleansing the body out, purification process to allow awakening to stick. The third one, we're deconstructing the illusion, and it's not enough to bypass it, it's not enough to transcend it, which is what many of the initial practices that we do when we first start out with awakening is. We are transcending the identity, the personal story. We get relief from that. We can have spontaneous awakenings and openings where we feel like that identity is not there anymore. But it didn't actually deconstruct, we bypassed it in those experiences, whether they were a spontaneous grace that happened or whether we learnt how to, through spiritual practice, to go beyond that and get in the witness position. And through that, we actually started spiritually bypassing because we weren't addressing what it is that we need to do to help awakening to keep progressing. And so this third element is to deconstruct the identity, and that is a painful process. There's a lot of loss experienced, a lot of change experienced in life. It is not easy, and so it is certainly not just a matter of bypassing it and just assuming it's gone. It may feel like it's not there, but you've just transcended it. That's a very common way for people to spiritually bypass. And it really can sincerely feel like it's gone, just like the trauma can feel like it's gone. So there's a difference between that we can't feel something anymore and that it's actually gone. And that's the difference between something being unconscious to us and buried. So if it is unconscious, it means we can't access it. It doesn't mean that it's not there. And this is a key element to awakening, is to understanding how awakening works, is that we're trying to get to the unconscious material, whether that be trauma that is stored in the body that we're wanting to somatically let go of, and the deeper layers of that second point, or whether it's to do with the identity structure, the third point, and going through the deeper layers, which will feel hidden initially. It will feel like you've done the work, you've been doing this for years, there's nothing else there, I can't find anything. That's what it means to be unconscious, is that you haven't unlocked that next layer of the material yet. So we want to keep going back, beginner's mind, going deeper and deeper into what the next layer might be. And this is to do with identity. And so deconstructing identity is a big deal, and it is really at the heart of what awakening is about. That has to be completely gone before the permanent awakening will take place. It's a non-identity state to be awake. There is no identity. So to say I live from awareness is to say too much, because that makes it sound like an identity, which it is not. So when we do a spiritual practice, it can be helpful to have a guide like this, an understanding of how awakening actually works, if we're talking about not just transcending, but actually working on awakening to get it to become permanent. If it doesn't fall into one of those three general areas, then it's probably not that helpful for progression with awakening. Is it helpful for relief in the moment? Certainly. Is it helpful for a transcendent experience? Yes. But no amount of transcending the content will do anything to help erase the content. It just bypasses it, endlessly coming out and away from it. It doesn't resolve the content in any way. To resolve the content, we need to go into the content and meet it. So, for example, in this practice that I'm speaking about, so instead of there's this difficult emotion here, let me become the awareness of that emotion. Okay, now I feel a bit better. I've transcended it. I've bypassed it. Might still feel a little uncomfortable there, but the intensity is nowhere near as bad. Now I feel better. So that is something in the transcendent phase, the earlier phase of awakening, that you could do to cope in life. But it will not help with awakening because we haven't dealt with the emotion, the content. That's what wants to be dealt with. Now, if we're talking about progressing with awakening, not getting better and better at transcending, which does not lead to permanent awakening, it is a dead end. It just leads to more transcending and a lifetime of doing practices to transcend that doesn't lead to permanent awakening. But if we really want permanent awakening, if we're sick of just transcending, then we need to come and meet the content. So it's like there's sadness there. Now, instead of getting in the witnessing position, which might be getting very automatic now if you've been doing it a long time, we instead feel the sadness, examine the sadness, allow it to take over, maybe emotionally process the sadness, maybe do some inner child work around the origin of the sadness. But we do some type of healing. We allow it to be there, we allow ourselves to feel it, we allow ourselves to express it, and we go as deep as we can into whatever it is that's arising. Now we're talking about one of those three categories that I spoke about. So that might be the second one, to do with healing something that's stored in the body. So we're working on that now. So yes, now we're working towards permanent awakening again. We're not bypassing anymore. So to understand this difference will really help you to understand what practices to pick that are truly helpful to progress with awakening and not just escape how you're feeling in the moment.